Hello, everyone. I want to talk to you guys about Ukraine. Surprise, surprise, right? That has been a topic that I have been really talking about for years, going all the way back to 2015. When I saw that video of Ukrainian Nazis crucifying a man and then lighting him on fire. And that's what opened up my eyes to Ukraine, to the reality of Ukraine. And you see these horrific videos coming out. We've been seeing these horrific videos ever since the conflict broke out in 2014. We've seen a guy get crucified alive. We have seen a man being buried alive. And in this war, we have seen Russian POWs being executed in cold blood. And I saw a video today, yesterday actually. I saw a video that really broke my heart. It was a video of a Russian soldier and a Ukrainian man, and the Ukrainian Nazi, plunges a knife into the Russian man's eyeball. And I don't speak Russian, but I know pain when I hear it. It's a universal language. Everybody knows it. And the Ukrainian Nazi bastard takes the beanie off of the Russian man's head and shows him the knife. This is the knife that I'm going to use to kill you. And he's going to put the knife into the man's eyeball, and the Russian man is saying something in his language. He's saying a word that starts with an N. It's not niet, but it sounds like it. So I'm assuming that he was saying, no, don't kill me, please. And you can hear suffering. You can hear it. You can hear the desperate clinging on to life. You can hear a man just trying to do whatever he can to stay on this earth. It's heartbreaking. It's horrifying. When you hear the sound of a man clinging on to dear life, it's horrifying. It's a horrifying, it's a blood-curdling, bone-chilling, just a horrifying sound. It's harrowing. And he sticks the knife into the man's eye, and there's silence. There's silence. And you think, okay, it's over, right? You think it's over. It's over, right? He's dead. It's over. No. A moment later, you hear this blood-chilling scream. And the screaming is prolonged. And it goes on and on and on. And the Nazi leaves the knife inside the man's... at this point, the blade is in his head. It's not deep enough that it's killed him, but it's still in his head. It's through the eyeball in his head. And he's screaming in the most... it's horrifying to hear this man scream. And I was so disturbed. And you think, when is it going to be over? And he slams the knife into the guy's skull, and he's dead, and it's over. Then the Nazi takes the knife, and he does this speech in front of the camera, and he's obviously very much so full of himself, and he's filled with pride, and he's filled with arrogance, and he's so proud of himself. He's so proud of himself for murdering a man in such a manner. And I don't understand his language, but there was one thing that I did understand, and that was Slava Ukraini. That has become the new Allahu Akbar. I shouldn't laugh. That has become the new Allahu Akbar. Right? Remember back in the day, it was Allahu Akbar, right? Beheadings, a man being burned alive, people getting drowned, people being hung on meat hooks. It was Allahu Akbar. Now it's Slava Ukraini. The difference is that the Western world has embraced Slava Ukraini. Herodium Slava. Slava Ukraini. Herodium Slava. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. That's what that means. You see, I understand a little bit of Ukrainian, right? Just like we all understand a little bit of Arabic. Everyone knows Allahu Akbar. God is greater. Allah is greater. That's what it means. You watch a beheading video, Allahu Akbar. You watch a bombing, Allahu Akbar. You watch people getting murdered in the most horrific ways by ISIS or by al-Nusra or by some group of Islamic fanatics. It's Allahu Akbar. The difference between Allahu Akbar and Slava Ukraini, besides the obvious differences between the words that's being used, right, and between the different contexts that each of these phrases have, is that the West has embraced Slava Ukraini. The West has not embraced Allahu Akbar. When we hear Allahu Akbar, we're horrified, right? If you're on an airplane and you hear Allahu Akbar, you're freaking horrified, aren't you? I'd be terrified too. But not with Slava Ukraini. You have people in America who are not even Ukrainian saying Slava Ukraini, which is pretty damn cringy. You have people on their Twitter accounts saying Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine. Now, with Allahu Akbar, there is an historical context, right? We all know what that is, right? There's a religious context, and there's an historical background. The religious background is obvious. It stems from the Islamic faith, the Islamic religion. With the historical context, that's also obvious. This has been the battle cry of the Muslims, right? This has been the battle cry of the Ummah. So it's obvious, right? And they believe that by fighting the infidel, they are spreading Islam, and thereby they are spreading the worship of Allah, who is the greatest of all gods. So that's why they say Allahu Akbar, right? Allah is greater than the Christian God. That's what that whole thing means. Slava Ukraini has an historical context, and that is this was the phrase used by the Ukrainian ultra-nationalists, members of the OUN. For those of you who have been following my channel, this term, OUN, this acronym, has become probably quite redundant, right? Oh, here's Ted again talking about the OUN, because I've talked about this in many videos, and I've written a number of articles. I've written a whole essay on Ukrainian nationalism and the background that was in what is now known as Western Ukraine during the 1940s, in which tens of thousands of Polish civilians were butchered by Ukrainian nationalist fanatics who were thirsty for blood. This was the phrase of the Ukrainian murderers, the Ukrainian nationalist fanatics who murdered tens of thousands of civilians, mainly Polish people. And when they say Herodium Slava, what they're saying is glory to the heroes. And what I have never seen any of these sycophants ask is, what heroes? I haven't seen any of these bastards, these screechy-voiced, Reddit-reading pieces of garbage, Americans, British, Canadians, whatever they are. I've never seen any of these scoundrels ask, when they say Herodium Slava, which means glory to the heroes, which heroes? Who are your heroes? They don't ask that question. Oh, I'm just afraid. Kind of reminds me of when John McCain was supporting the Syrian revolution. And I'm trying to see. Yeah, just checking my mic. It kind of reminds me of when John McCain was around, before he croaked, and he was talking about the Syrian rebels and how heroic they were. And there was a video that came out from Syria. I think it was of a plane getting shot down or something. And the Muslim guy who's holding the camera says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And McCain is like, well, that's like saying God bless you. That's what he said, the bastard. And isn't it really not ironic at all that we later saw John McCain in 2014 hanging out in the Euromaidan in Ukraine with the leader of Svoboda. Svoboda is the Nazi party in Ukraine, one of these ultra-nationalist political parties. in Ukraine. There he was with, I believe, Ole Tihanebok, another psychopath. And he was supporting the Ukrainian fanatics. Not surprising at all. But who are these people's heroes? Who are they? Bandera? A murderer and a rapist? Andrei Melnik? A mass murderer? Roman Shukhevich? Another mass murderer? Mykola Lebed? Another mass murderer? Mass murderer after mass murderer after mass murderer lies in the pantheon of Ukrainian nationalism. And yet we sit here and act as if it's the Russians who are just the evil ones and the Ukrainians are great and we have to support the Ukrainians, as if no one has ever learned recent history. Recent history, everybody. It's not that complicated. America went into Iraq and said Saddam Hussein was evil. Yes, Saddam Hussein was bad. His sons were mobsters. Qusay and Hussein died on a Tuesday. I remember people were saying this joke back when I was in middle school after Saddam's sons were killed. Saddam was bad, but who the hell did we support? People who were worse than Saddam Hussein. I don't have to tell you guys about Syria. America made the same mistake in the 18th century with the French Revolution. The Americans thought, oh, monarchy is bad, right? Because they were all Freemasons. America was founded by Freemasons. Just look at the dollar. You see the pyramid and the all-seeing eye. If you're in a Freemasonic country, okay? Let's be real here. It's not a Christian country. You know, you got Glenn Beck walking around. That's a Christian country. I'm glad not everybody believes that because it's bullshit and it's a myth and it's a lie that the Christian right wants you to believe. It's not true. I used to believe that, but, you know, I was lost. Now I'm found. It's a bunch of nonsense. But the people who founded this country were, for the most part, quite optimistic about the French Revolution. Oh, look, it's so great. Look at they're fighting monarchy, right? Because one of the tenets of Masonry is that monarchy must be destroyed. All monarchy must be dismantled. This was one of the ideologies. This was part of the ideology of Freemasonry, right? And I don't say that as some guy who's like, oh, the Masons run the world. I mean, like, back in the day, when you read about the Masons and who they were, they actually had a political ideology that you can read about. The whole idea was overthrowing monarchy. Monarchy is evil and it's tyrannical. But then you read about the French Revolution and you read about French rebels cannibalizing people on the streets and how they took one guy and they were about to murder him and his daughter pled for her father's life and they said, oh, if you want your dad to live, here's some blood, drink it. And she drank the blood and they spared her father, but they got the pleasure out of forcing a girl to drink human blood and traumatizing her for the rest of her life. And then people realize, oh my God, this revolution is so bad. No shit. Why? Why do I say no crap? Why do I say that? Right? Why is it so? Why I am always skeptical and pessimistic when it comes to revolution. Always, right? I'm never optimistic about revolution. Why? Because when you have a mob of people who want something, expect that mob to be taken advantage of by political opportunists. Now, that's one take that you can have. That's one perspective you can have, right, in your skepticism for revolution. There's another take that you can have, and this is probably the correct one, and that is that there are no political opportunists. The end result of a revolution it goes exactly as planned. Right? So people could say, well, the revolution started out good, but these evil rebels took over and it went back. No. They're evil rebels doing evil things and the revolution being evil. That's actually part of the plan, right? And this is a more realistic take, I think. Like it all appears to be political opportunists, but then it turns out that it's all interconnected. Like the French Revolution, perfect example. Oh, well, we just want to remove monarchy. But then you look at the ideology of the rebels and you find out, oh, they were into Freemasonry. They were into the Enlightenment idea. They were into the whole idea of removing religion. And so destroying the church, killing the priests, killing nuns, and doing all these horrific things, it all really was the end result of their own ideology. And I've been asked before about, Ted, what do you think about all these Iranian women burning hijabs? I have no optimism, right? Because, like I said, revolutions, they're used for evil. I will even question the American Revolution. The whole idea of the American Revolution was about what? It was about a bunch of rich dudes who didn't want to pay taxes to the British government. That probably was the case. The same thing with the Euromaidan of 2014. Euromaidan of 2014 happens. Everyone thinks, oh my God, look, they're pro-European, pro-West, pro-democracy. They hate Putin. Putin's an evil tyrant, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here thinking, nope, don't trust it. Don't trust it whatsoever. And there was a book that I read a number of years ago. I think it was called Nazis and the Euromaidan. And it was a great book, and it showed how there were Nazis in the Euromaidan, how the Nazis in the Euromaidan, they were not just some fringe group in the crowd. Like, they were a huge integral part of the revolution. They were very important. They were extremely fundamental. They were actually very necessary for the revolution. And so you look at that and you think, oh my God, I'm going to have to question this whole damn thing. Same thing with this whole Ukraine thing. The Euromaidan and the Ukrainian situation today are completely inseparable. You can't separate the two. The whole thing is interconnected. It all begins with the Euromaidan, right? It begins with the Euromaidan, and you can go further back than that. You can go back to when there was a law that was passed in Ukraine, basically outlawing the Russian language, saying you can't have Russian language on the television anymore, and people got pissed. Like, I get it, right? There's a whole historical background. You can go back to Stalin, the Second World War. I get it. But you can still trace a lot of this back to the Euromaidan in the sense that you had this government in Ukraine that was perceived as being pro-Russia or being a puppet of Russia, and the people overthrew it and all that. But then you read about all these Nazis that were in it. And you read about how the Nazis were so fundamental to it, and you have to question the whole damn thing. And you think, oh, it's pro-Ukraine, pro-this, pro-Europe, pro-West, pro-Euro, as if these automatically mean that it's good, right? Oh, it's pro-America, it must be good. Well, there's a lot of things that are pro-America, quote unquote, that are evil. Just because you're pro-democracy doesn't make you good. It also means that you're probably just using democracy as a way to advance your own evil agenda, and then you get rid of democracy after that. And the whole fantasy of Ukraine, just rising up against tyranny, but then you find out, wait a second, they have this thing called the Azov Battalion, they have this thing called the Idar Battalion, they have this thing called the Tornado Battalion, and the Tornado Battalion was literally raping people as part of their agenda, and they were kidnapping civilians, men and women, and raping them. They were raping men and women. They were raping children, murdering people in horrific ways. They had a torture chamber in the basement of a school library, and they were tried. They were found guilty. They were sentenced to several years in prison, depending on their respective sentences. But then they were released, and now they're back on the battlefield. And you can't help but look at the whole thing and question it. And then when the war happened, we heard of these stories. Oh, look, a Russian soldiers raped a Ukrainian 1-year-old infant to death. And you think, oh my God, this is horrible. Then you find out that the story was a complete lie. You find out that the story came from some Ukrainian woman by the name of Ludmila Denisova, who had an official position in the Ukrainian parliament. And it turned out that she was so full of shit that the Ukrainians got rid of her because she kept making up these outlandish stories about babies being raped. They said, listen, you're embarrassing us. We know you're full of shit, but you're kind of going too far with these stories. And so we're going to get rid of you. And they got rid of her. And they were Ukrainian journalists who stood up and said that this woman is a liar. But I'm pretty certain that people believed that bullshit when it first came out. Bucja. Now we're getting into some real sensitive territory here. I question the official narrative of Bucja. They say, oh, look, Russia went into this town and committed a massacre. But the story of Bucja didn't pop up immediately after the Russians left. The mayor of Bucja did a speech of victory, talking about how the Russians were repulsed and defeated. And there was no talk of a massacre. then a video pops up filmed by a Nazi, a Ukrainian Nazi, and there's another Nazi in front of him. And one Nazi says, if they have white armbands, can we shoot them? And the other guy says, F yes, you can. Well, who were those who wore white armbands? These were the Russians. The Russians were the ones wearing white armbands. So he's saying, if they have white armbands, can I kill them? And then you see bodies in Bucja, and they're wearing white armbands. I have to call this story into question. I have to call the Western narrative in regards to Bucja into question. And they'll sit there and say, "Oh no, look, there was this massacre, and there was this, and there was that." And I think there needs to be a further investigation on this story. There needs to be a more independently done investigation on the story, one that is free of Russophobia and anti-Russian bias. And then you read about how after Bucha was taken, the Ukrainians said, "We're going to be doing a cleansing of the town. We're going to cleanse the town of Russian collaborators." So you hear about cleansing of the town of Russian collaborators. You hear a recording from two Nazis that came from Nazis saying, if they have white armbands, can we kill them? I'm sorry. I don't see why we're not questioning the official narrative here. You know, and then you read about this thing. I think it was in Kupiansk. There was this massacre that took place. There was a massacre that took place, and it was in this town called Kupiansk. And there was a video that came out back in October of this year, in which you see a pit, and there's a couple dead bodies in the pit, and then you see another video where a body is rolling down a hill into this very pit, right? And then in the first video, you see the man who ends up dead and rolling down into the pit. You see him blindfolded being led up into this hill, and then you see his body rolling down. Well, the video came out in October of 2022. Kupiansk was taken back by the Ukrainians in September of 2022. So after a month of Ukrainian occupation of this town, Ukrainian control over Kupiansk, you see this video. And automatically you have people online saying, "Oh, look, these are victims of the Russians." Well, hold on a second. Kupiansk has been under Ukrainian control for a month. And if you look at the metadata of this video, it indicates that the clip was created in October of 2022. You have these people online who argue and say things like, "Well, actually, no, the file name of the video, it says something like, it says something like, it says like October 9th, 2022, right? It has the date as the file name, and they'll say, yeah, that's the file name, right? That doesn't mean that it was filmed in October. That just means that it was posted up on Telegram in October or whatever. You see, when I say, and this is what they argue, they'll say, well, when you save the video in your phone, Telegram will change the name of the file, right? So the name of the file is no longer October 2022. The name of the file is something else. But we're not talking about the name of the file. If you look at the little section from the metadata, it's called something like data create. It always says that it was made on that month. That it always has that month, October of 2022. So the town was under the control of the Russians, and this video didn't come out. All of a sudden, after a month of Ukrainian control, the video comes out, and you see this body rolling into a pit. And people automatically, they had this knee-jerk reaction, and they say, "Oh, this was done by the Russians." But they don't want to call it into question. They don't want to call this narrative into question. So you look at all this stuff, and you look at, who are the heroes of Ukraine? Mass murderers, Nazis. Who are the Ukrainians praising? Azov Battalion. Give me a Ukrainian today who doesn't praise Azov. Give me a Ukrainian today who will tell you, not a Russian Ukraine, I mean like a Western Ukrainian. Give me one that's going to tell you Azov is an evil group. they're Nazis. And what's amazing is that you have a video of a man being crucified alive by the people that the West supports, by the people that NATO supports. And these assholes will say, that didn't happen, this was acting. And then you find a video of a man being buried alive by these very Nazis. And the assholes at Radio Free Europe will say, oh, this was acting. What's their argument? Their argument is that when they put the guy in the pit and they bury him alive, it takes only a few minutes for them to fill up the hole with the man in it with the dirt. And I'm like, that's your argument, that this is acting. That is your argument. Because it takes too long to fill up a ditch, because they have a whole damn mound of dirt next to it. It doesn't take that long to push a mound of dirt into a ditch. Either these people are full of shit, or they've never worked with dirt in their lives. So they'll say, the man being crucified, that's acting. The man being buried alive, that's acting. But not one of these sons of bitches have dealt with the video of the Russian man being stabbed through his eyeball. Because you can't tell me that's acting. That's real. And I didn't know about this video until I interviewed Dejan Bedic, the Serbian sniper who's fighting in Russia. And he told me about the video. He said there's a video of a Ukrainian Nazi stabbing a Russian man in the eye. So I was searching for it a couple of nights ago. I was searching for it, couldn't find it. So I thought, man, did Beric make this up? Did the Serbian sniper make it up? Maybe it's hearsay that he heard from someone, and now he's telling it to me, and we're having a little telephone game thing going on. Then I finally found the video, and I watched it. He wasn't lying. He wasn't making it up. The shit's real. The shit's real, everybody. It's not a lie. You look at all this stuff and how the West is covering up for the Ukrainians and say, oh, no, that didn't happen. Oh, no, that didn't happen. And then when it becomes obvious, then they have to admit it, like the video of those Russian soldiers being executed. They have to admit that because it's real. Or that other video that came out back in April when the war was very new. It was March and April, where you see these Ukrainians shooting these Russian soldiers in the knees committing war crimes. Well, that's okay. That's fine. You see all this shit. And I have to admit, Ukraine is an evil country. It's just an evil country. Russia will celebrate the fact that they fought against the Nazis. Yes, Russia has its own problems. I know this. But Russia will celebrate the fact that they had victory over the fascist. But who do the Ukrainians celebrate? Who do they celebrate? People who collaborated with the fascists. People who were mass murderers. It's an evil country. It's an evil country. And you know, I knew this guy. He was a Ukrainian guy. He was in a Ukrainian punk rock band called Bruta. They make very good music, very creative band. But I talked to this guy. And when I first met him, he came across as this liberal European guy, blah, blah, blah. But then when the war broke out, him and I started arguing. And I sent him videos of Ukrainian fascists, and I screaming Slava Ukraini and holding torches and praising Stepan Bandera. And I said, are these the people that you support? Do you support these people? And he said, yes, I do. So you support fascists. Even though you're a liberal European, you support fascists. And it's so surreal to me. It's so surreal to me. I'm not a Zoomer, okay? I'm a millennial. I'm a mooner, okay? I'm not a Zoomer. I'm a mooner. And the millennials are kind of like boomers, right? In the sense that our parents are boomers, and so we were raised by boomers, and what we watched was what boomers watched, right? For a long time, for a good chunk of our lives. And we were told about the Nazis, and we were told about the fascists, and my God, we hated that stuff. We were raised to hate Nazism. We were raised to hate Adolf Hitler. But what do we see now? A bunch of screechy-voiced Reddit reader Westerners saying, oh, right on, man, they're fighting Putin, man. Putin's a monster. And it's like, yeah, but those guys are those guys are Nazis, right? Azov Battalion, they're Nazis, right? It's part of the Ukrainian military. Well, that's fine. That's okay. We can tolerate that. It's better than Putin, man. It's better than Putler. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Those are my thoughts on Ukraine. I thought I would get this out. Russia right now is defeating Ukraine, thank God. The Ukrainians are losing. Russia is fighting the Ukrainians in Bakhmut. This is where a lot of the fighting is concentrated. And you have these English assholes saying, why is Putin fighting for Bakhmut? I mean, there seems to be no strategic value for it at all. Then you read the facts that if Russia takes Bakhmut, the Ukrainian supply lines will be greatly disabled and ruptured. And the Russians will have the access to push towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And if the Ukrainians lose Bakhmut, it's pretty much over for them. And even General Wesley Clark, I didn't pull this out of my ass, everybody. I learned this from General Wesley Clark himself. He said this, that if the Russians beat the Ukrainians in Bakhmut, they can push forward towards Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And basically it's a way for the Russians to pull the Ukrainians into a damn meat grinder, because that's what Bakhmut is right now. It's a damn meat grinder for the Ukrainians. So all of you sycophants, now I want to use a nastier term than sycophant, right? Starts with the C, but I won't say it here because it's a family YouTube channel. But all of you sycophants out there who are like, oh, look, man, Russians can't even fight a war. Aha! Oh, down with Putin, man. Putler. All of you American sycophants out there, look at Bakhmut. Even the Western media is admitting that the Ukrainians are messing up big time and they're getting slaughtered over there. And the casualties for the Ukrainians are freaking huge. So all of you assholes out there who are sitting there, oh, Russia can't win a war, everything's slaughtered. Well, guess what? Your Nazi friends are getting their asses kicked. And good freaking riddance. Good riddance. And all these Western assholes going to Ukraine to fight against Russia, they're in the meat grinder as well. And you know what? I'm not sad about it. We're not losing anything. America's not losing anything. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.
Тучи растают, луч нами рос, так же грязный был, как этот город. И пока я живой, я борюсь